How's it going? In this video, I wanted to share a song that I've been working on the last few weeks. It's called If You Could Read My Mind by Gordon Lightfoot. It's a nice finger picking style song, and the chords are pretty simple. He plays each chord in a specific way. I got the sheet music from musicnotes.com. I'll try to remember to put the link to their site for it in the description. So he plays G just here. Oh, and I should point out the sheet music says to put the capo on the second fret. Instead of playing the full G, he just plays the first string of it. Then he plays what they're calling G9. So I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Not here. I should have did the third. So when I say third, I mean third up from where the capo is. So 1, 2, 3. And then for G9, it's that one plus you put a finger on the third string from the bottom, the second fret up from the capo. And then there's a version of a D minor, what they're calling a D minor 6/F, which you still play that same location that I just mentioned. And then you put a finger on the first fret of the first string. And again, I'm counting from the capo location. So for the first part of the song, that's the only chords that show up for the first 2 pages. On the third page, a few other chords show up, but they're pretty basic, like C, for example. And it has a specific strumming pattern. So the intro strumming part. So I mentioned the first version of G, you have your finger on the top string, third fret. And then he's strumming the second, third, and fourth strings from the bottom open string. And he's starting at the next to the bottom string, and he comes up, and he does that twice. But on the final part of that, that's when he first puts his finger down on the second fret of the third string from the bottom and plays that as well with it. So it sounds like this. I'll do it again. And then he keeps that down and he plays the same exact pattern. And then at the end of this measure, I couldn't think of the word, at the end of this measure, he goes back to the original where you take your finger back up. And so he does that back and forth, 2 sets of 2. So he starts off with the first version. So that's the intro strumming part. Right after that measure is when he starts singing. At that point, for the first 2 measures, he does the same thing. If the sheet music's correct, he simplifies it and he just does the open string version twice. And then that's when he first switches to that other D minor 6/F. At that point, he does that twice. Then he goes back to the first version of G. And then back to that D minor I mentioned, D minor 6/. Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake right there. At this point, he does go back to alternating. So instead of doing it all open string, he does that original pattern where he starts off open and switches to using that second fret on the third from bottom string. But again, if the sheet music's correct, here they're showing it, keeping it completely open for the first measure in the sequence, and then keeping the 2 down for the second one. I would have to listen to the song again to see if you can hear the difference. So that's the first full 2 pages. Let's see. I forgot to mention the very, very intro of the song before he starts to strum the chords, or the course, or the chords. The very intro of the song, they show it's a very simple little rhythm. He plays the first 2 the bottom 2 strings on the 3rd fret up from the capo, and then immediately the 5 after that. So it sounds like, and then goes up to 7, 5 and 7 together, and then back down to 3. So it sounds like, and then that's when he jumps right into the. So that gets you through the first 2 pages, including the little intro riff that I mentioned. So that was the first 2 pages. Now I'll go through the 3rd and 4th page. I'll first mention the chords in the order that they appear. So the first chord that shows up is just the standard C. And he plucks that in a similar fashion. He first plucks the root, the C, and then again he comes up. So that similar pattern. And then after that is D, starting with the root, which is the D string. After that, he plays E minor, but he really only frets the 1 string of it. I'm not D minor, E minor. That's E minor, but you really only need this one, the 2nd fret of the 3rd string from the top. And he uses the root, the top string for that. And then back to C. Okay. And then at that point, he plays 1 measure of the first version of G we saw, and then C again. And then the second version, I'm sorry, I misspoke. This is a new version of G. This is called G/B. So this G/B, you'll have your index finger on the 2nd fret of the 2nd string from the top, and your, I guess, ring finger, your finger next to your pinky, on the 3rd fret of the next to the bottom string. And again, you're using that same plucking pattern. Start with the root, that's the B in this case, and then come up. And then you're going to shift that first finger down just 1 string and do the same pattern again. And then after that, you go back to the D we saw a moment ago. I'm sorry. Like I said, then you go back to the D we just saw a moment ago and you pluck it the same way he did before. At that point, we go back and we see the same. We're now, by the way, that D that I just mentioned takes us to the top of page 4. And I'll include the link to the sheet music I'm using. The chords at that point return to the original chords we saw on page 1. So the first was the G we saw. Where he's doing that alternating pattern. So that is the point at which we return to the beginning for the second verse of the song. And you know that because you'll see 2 small dots. There'll be 2 lines with 2 small dots. And that's indicating that that part of the song is completed. And on the sheet music, it has 2 versions. A version you play the first time through, a version you play the second time through. So for this first version that's numbered 1, if you get the sheet music, you'll see what I mean. On that version, right after you play that second G that I just mentioned, you'll see the 2 dots, which is telling us we need to go back to the very beginning and pick up and start the second verse of the song. So that completes the full first pass through the song. I'll take a second and see. So if you do go back and do the second verse, in other words, it's the same chords in the order we just went through. It's just different words. One moment and I'll see what's next. So once you go back to the beginning and play through to this point and you come to the page 4 again, there is a second version that I mentioned, and you'll see that on the sheet music numbered number 2. And so for the second pass through at the end of the second verse, you follow that. And at the beginning of that, you see 2 things. You see the chords that we saw on the original first page, the G, and you see that D minor 6/F. But you also see kind of a little riff. I wouldn't quite call it a solo. It's just a quick little riff that you can hear in the song. There's 2 actually, or 2 lines of it. So the first part is very similar to the intro of the song. You first play the open string of the 4th string from the top, which is the G string. And then immediately after that, you play that same little pattern we saw at the beginning of the song. Sorry. But then instead of going back up, you go over to this 7. And then he does this little walk down starting at 10. And then back up to 10, then jump back down to 7. And then you do 8 and then 7, and then back to 8. And then 10. And then you do that same walk down. And then 7, 8. So it's just a little riff. If you get the sheet music, you'll see it's pretty simple. And then the song picks up again with the singing. That takes you to the top of page 5, and that's the bridge of the song. And it starts off with the same G that we're used to seeing. And then the second version of it, the G9 that they're calling, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. So it's first the G, and then the second version of G, where you put your index finger down on the second fret of the G string, the third string from the bottom. And then he goes to C, and then D, and then that E minor again, where we just end up really playing that one string. You're technically playing E minor, but you really just need to put your index finger on the second fret of the third string from the top. And then C, and then back to the original G. So that takes you through page 5. So now we're at page 6 and 7. So at the top of page 6, he plays C. And then he plays that G/B that we saw a moment ago. And then to play the next A7 suspended, which you'll see it on the sheet music is just SUS. People call it A7 sus, but it stands for suspended. All you do is move your index finger down one string from where you were. And then to the D. Sorry. And then to that version of E minor that we've been seeing. And then C. Then the very first version of G that we saw. Then C again. And then that G/B that we've recently been doing. Then A7 sus. And then D again. That takes us to the top of page 7, which is just the C, G/B, A7 sus, D, G, sorry, G9, which is with the other string added, G, G9, okay. And then E, C, G, C, G/B, A7 sus, D, and then E minor. That gets you to the bottom of page 7. I may have made a mistake. There's the way they organize this particular page. You'll see it if you get it. They have the section they call the coda of the song, and they have notation to descend the coda, so it kind of directs you where to go in the sheet music. But if you actually try and learn the song, you can figure that out. At least you'll know the chords in the particular page and the order, and then that one detail I'll let you look at when you get the sheet music and correct. You'll probably have to correct me on that one detail. Sorry about that. That takes us to the final page, which is page 8. It starts with C. G, C, G/B, A7 sus, D, C, G/B, A7 sus, D, the original G, G9, the D minor 6/F that we saw early on. He plays that for 2 measures. And then the very first G is what he ends with. And he actually plays a little riff there on the way out. Let's see if I can figure it out quickly. Just a little riff there at the end. So that's the parts of the song. Now I'll see if I can try maybe at least doing the first portion of it all together slowly with the words. I may have to piece this part together because I'm still working on putting this all together. Okay, so I'll do it section by section. I'll try and do it with the words this time so you can kind of see where the words come in with it. And I'll probably just do the first verse because the chords are the same for the second. And I'll probably just add on the bridge so you have that with it. So it starts off with that little riff. And then he starts off with that little chord progression. You put me in my mind. What a time my thoughts could tell. Just like an old time. Now goes for a ship will. So that's the first 2 pages, and then at page 3 and 4, I'll pick up there. Or a fortress strong, chains upon my feet. Sorry, made a mistake. You know the ghost is me. Sorry, I made a mistake. I'm going to pick up the E minor again. You know the ghost is me. And I will be so free as long as I know those that you can see. So that's the first verse. I'm going to jump and just do the bridge now. The second verse is just like that. And then we get to this part and you carry on through. There's that little riff, but I won't do that again. So the next part where you have the words with the chords is the bridge. And that is on the next page, I believe page 5. And that takes us to the top of page 5 where the bridge begins. I'd walk away like a movie star. page 6. And that gets us to the last 2 pages, 7 and 8. He starts with the C chord. He picks up there. I don't know when, feeling's gone, I just can't get it back. This is where I made that mistake earlier where it switches into the coda. So halfway through that page, they play the coda, which starts with the E minor. But stories always end. Trying to understand the feelings that you like. I never thought I could feel this way. Have to say that just don't get it. I don't know where we went wrong, but the feeling gone and I just can't get it back. Oh, I'm sorry. Then he goes straight to the D minor. He ends with the first G. So those are the pieces. I hope this is helpful if you decide you want to learn it. Thanks.